12 hours on the road doesn't just make you tired, it strips pieces off you. By the time I crossed into the northern stretch of highway that night, my thoughts had thinned out into something narrow and mechanical. Hands steady on the wheel, eyes scanning lines and shadows, breath timed to the hum of the engine. The sun was sinking behind the tree line, stretching the world flat and gold, the kind of light that lies to you. It makes everything look peaceful, safe, like nothing bad could happen out there anymore. The town I rolled through barely felt real. A gas station with one pump lit, a diner with its sign half burned out, houses sitting back from the road with porch lights glowing weak and yellow. No people, no movement. It felt like the kind of place that existed only to be passed through, like it would fold back into nothing once you were gone. That was when I saw her. She stood just past the town limits, right where the shoulder narrowed and the trees started to crowd the road. Backpack slung low, one arm hugged tight around herself, the other held out with her thumb raised, trembling slightly in the cooling air. She looked wrong out there, too young, too small. No jacket, bare legs already blotched red from the cold creeping in fast. I remember thinking she looked like someone who didn't belong to the world she was standing in, like she'd wandered into the wrong story. I didn't slow at first. Every instinct screamed to keep going. Every voice I'd ever learned from, every cautionary tale traded over truck stop coffee, all of it echoed in my head. Don't stop, don't engage, don't invite trouble into your cab. But fatigue makes a liar out of wisdom, and pity has a way of slipping past your defenses when you're worn down. I watched her in the mirror as I passed. She didn't chase, didn't wave frantically, just stood there, still, watching the road swallow me. That's what made me break. I told myself I'd just ask if she needed help calling someone, just make sure she wasn't in danger. That was the lie I needed to hear. When I pulled over, she approached quickly, like she was afraid I'd change my mind. She climbed up into the cab without hesitation, thanked me with a bright smile that felt practiced, like she'd used it before. Up close, she smelled faintly of dirt and something sharp underneath, like metal or cold stone. She gave me a name. It slid off her tongue easily. Said she'd gotten separated from friends while hiking. Said it like it was an inconvenience, not something that should have terrified her. I told her she was lucky I came by before dark. She laughed, but it sounded thin. The truck rolled forward, and just like that, she was inside my world, feet planted on my floor mat, breathing my air. She talked a lot at first, asked how long I'd been driving, asked where I was headed, asked if the nights got lonely. I gave short answers, kept my eyes on the road. I didn't like how closely she watched my face when I spoke, like she was measuring something. When she asked if driving alone ever scared me, I tried to joke it off, said the road was safer than people. That's when she smiled again, and this time I noticed something I hadn't before. Her eyes didn't change. The sky bruised purple and blue as daylight bled out. The trees thickened, fields turned into shadowy stretches where anything could be standing just beyond the headlights. She asked for water. I handed her a bottle from the cooler. She drank slowly, deliberately, staring straight ahead like she was waiting for a sign. The cab felt smaller. The silence between her words felt heavy, loaded. Then she told me to slow down. Her voice wasn't panicked. It wasn't scared. It was firm, controlled. I barely had time to register the shapes ahead before the headlights washed over them fully. 3 bodies lay sprawled across both lanes, positioned just wrong enough for my brain to hesitate. No wrecked car, no broken glass, no skid marks, just human shapes lying perfectly still, pale against the asphalt like discarded mannequins. My foot hovered over the brake, instincts colliding in my chest. Every nerve screamed that something wasn't right. It was too clean, too deliberate. I reached for the radio mic, heart hammering, already forming the words to call it in. That's when she moved. Her hand slapped mine away hard enough to sting. The mic clattered against the dash. She turned on me, and the warmth drained out of her face in an instant. Her eyes sharpened, her voice dropped. "No, you don't have time for that." The shift was so sudden it made my stomach lurch. I told her we'd let the authorities handle it, that we weren't equipped to help. She leaned closer, her breath cold against my cheek, and told me they could be dying. Her tone wasn't pleading, it was instructive, like she was reminding me of something. One of the bodies sat up. Just like that. No groan, no confusion. It turned its head and looked straight at us. Something inside me went quiet. The part of my mind that argued, that reasoned, shut down completely. The pattern snapped into place all at once, sharp and undeniable. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't an emergency. It was a stage. I hit the accelerator instead of the brakes. The engine roared, the truck lunged forward, and she screamed, not in fear, but in rage. Her hand slammed against the dash. She shouted at me to turn around, told me I was making a mistake, told me her friends were waiting just ahead. Her face twisted into something raw and ugly, all pretense stripped away. In the mirror, I saw the other shapes scramble to their feet, vanishing into the trees as my headlights swept past. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty, but I knew there was a checkpoint coming. Lights, people, rules. She realized where I was heading before I saw it myself. Her anger cracked into panic. She begged then, voice breaking, tears appearing like she'd flipped a switch. Said you couldn't take her there. Said they couldn't see her. Her hands clawed at her hair, at her face, like she could tear her way out of the situation. I didn't look at her again. When I rolled to a stop under the checkpoint lights, relief hit me so hard my hands shook. Officers stepped up, flashlights cutting through the cab. I told them everything in a rush, my voice cracking despite myself. She collapsed into sobs instantly, spinning a story so convincing that it made my head swim. For a moment, doubt crept in. Then the officers exchanged a look I recognized instantly. They'd seen this before. She wasn't who she said she was. None of them were. They found knives stashed along the tree line, found evidence of other setups not far from there. One officer told me later that if I'd stopped, I wouldn't have left that road alive. I believed him. I still do. I drove the rest of the night with my jaw locked tight, every shadow on the roadside feeling alive. The road didn't change, but I did. Because once you see how easily kindness can be weaponized, you never look at a stranger the same way again.
The rest stop barely deserved a name. It was nothing more than a widening of asphalt off the interstate, a pair of cracked parking slots, a picnic table warped by weather, and a single sodium lamp buzzing weakly overhead. I pulled in just after midnight, exhaustion pressing down on me so hard it felt physical. I told myself I would only be there a few minutes, stretch my legs, sip some coffee, check the straps. Then I'd be gone. That was the lie I needed to keep moving. The silence hit me the moment I shut the engine down. Not the normal quiet of night, but something thicker, heavier, like sound itself had been swallowed. The only other vehicle there was an older rig parked at the far edge of the lot. Blue paint faded almost to gray. No company markings, no DOT numbers. The cab was dark, windows black, engine cold. It looked abandoned, but something about it made my skin crawl, like it was watching me. When I stepped out of my cab, the cold bit deep. My joints cracked as I stretched, breath puffing white in the air. I walked the length of the trailer, tugging on straps out of habit more than necessity. That's when my flashlight beam caught something dark smeared across the concrete near the edge of the lot. At first, I thought it was oil. Then I stepped closer. It wasn't oil. The color was wrong. Too dark, too thick. It glistened wetly under the beam, reflecting light in a way that made my stomach tighten. Blood has a look to it that you never forget once you've seen it. Fresh blood, even more so. My pulse began to hammer as I followed the trail, each step heavier than the last, the night pressing in around me like it was leaning closer to listen. The trail led toward the picnic area, where the light didn't quite reach. My hand shook as I pushed aside low branches with the flashlight. That was when I saw the shoe. Small, white, a pink stripe along the side, smeared with dirt and blood. I didn't want to look beyond it. My body locked up, every instinct screaming to turn around, to get back in the cab and leave. But something forced me forward anyway, like my mind hadn't caught up with my feet yet. I brushed the branches aside and found her. She lay half on her side, half face down, limbs twisted wrong, eyes wide open and empty. Bruises ringed her neck, dark and ugly. Her clothes were torn, her skin already cooling in the night air. She couldn't have been more than 20, maybe less. The flashlight slipped from my fingers and clattered to the ground. I staggered back, chest tight, lungs burning like I'd been running. There was no phone signal. Of course there wasn't. Places like that never have signal when you need it. I shouted, my voice cracking, asking if anyone was there, if anyone needed help. The night swallowed the sound without answering. I ran back to my cab and locked the doors, hands trembling so badly I could barely grip the CB mic. My voice shook as I called out, identifying my location, telling anyone who could hear me that there was a body at the rest stop. Static filled the cab for a long moment. Then a voice answered. Low, calm, unhurried. It asked me to repeat myself, like it already knew the answer. When I did, it chuckled softly, a dry sound that scraped against my nerves. Said maybe she was just drunk, maybe I was mistaken. I snapped back that she was dead, that I needed help, that someone needed to call it in. The voice paused, then said it would handle it, told me to stay put. That was when the other truck's engine coughed to life. Headlights flickered on briefly, then went dark again. A door opened. A man climbed down, moving slowly, deliberately, like he had nowhere else to be. He stopped just outside my headlight beam and introduced himself through the closed window. Asked if I was the one on the CB. I didn't unlock the door. He asked what I'd seen. There was something wrong with the way he listened. Too intent, too focused. He mentioned seeing a blonde girl earlier wearing a red jacket. My stomach dropped. The girl by the bushes had blonde hair, a red jacket. He watched my face carefully when he said it, and when I reacted, his mouth curled into a smile that held no warmth at all. He went back to his truck, but didn't leave, just sat there with the engine rumbling, lights off, watching. The pressure in my chest grew unbearable. I tried the phone again. Nothing. I started the engine. The roar felt like the only solid thing left in the world. I pulled out fast, tires chirping, heart pounding. In the mirror, his truck came alive, headlights snapping on, high beams flooding my cab. His voice returned on the CB, colder now, asking where I thought I was going. Said it would be bad if my prints were on something that wasn't mine. That was when fear turned into something sharper, clearer. I didn't slow down until I reached a gas station 2 miles up the road, fluorescent lights blazing, people moving inside. My phone buzzed back to life. When the police arrived later, they confirmed what I already knew. The girl had been murdered. The man I described didn't exist under the name he gave. His truck wasn't registered. They caught him days later. His cab was full of things that didn't belong to him. Hair, blood, rope, tape, evidence of others who hadn't been found yet. I don't stop at quiet rest areas anymore. The last incident happened years later. but the road has a way of circling back on itself. I'd been driving long enough by then to trust patterns, to believe I could spot trouble before it found me. That night in Iowa proved how wrong I was. The pull-off was small and forgotten, the kind you only notice when exhaustion forces your eyes off the road. Another rig sat under the dying light, red paint dulled by age, no markings to speak of. The driver approached me with a friendly wave, said his battery was dead, asked if I could help. Out here, you help each other. That's the rule, or at least it used to be. When I lifted the hood, the engine was spotless, cleaner than mine. The smell hit me next, metallic, sharp. Inside the cab, half hidden in shadow, I saw rope, duct tape, a dark stain on the floor, a woman's shoe with a torn strap. Something in his voice shifted when he noticed me looking. The friendliness drained away, replaced with something tight and eager. When he grabbed my arm, the world narrowed down to instinct alone. I ran. He chased me across the lot, shouting, pounding on my cab as I dove inside and locked the door. The engine roared to life just as his face pressed against the glass, twisted with fury. He followed me onto the highway, headlights burning in my mirrors, laughing over the CB like it was all a joke. For nearly an hour, he hunted me, ramming my trailer, trying to force me off the road. I called for help on Channel 19, my voice breaking as I described what was happening. Other truckers answered, one by one. Calm voices, steady voices. They coordinated without hesitation, slowing down, boxing him in, refusing to let him pass. When the sirens finally appeared, the red and blue lights painting the fields in violent color, I pulled over and sat shaking, unable to move. The police told me later that the man was wanted in multiple states: kidnapping, murder. The shoe I'd seen belonged to someone who'd been missing for months. They found more hidden in his truck, things no one should ever have to catalog. I still drive. I still follow the white lines through the dark. But the road doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels crowded, heavy with things that happened and things that almost did. I know now that predators don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like kids in trouble. Sometimes they sound like friendly voices on the radio. Sometimes they wear the same uniform you do. Out there, between towns, between lights, the rules are thin. And the road never forgets who it lets survive.
There's a moment that comes late at night, somewhere between exhaustion and routine, when the road stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a thing. It doesn't happen every trip. It waits for the right conditions. Empty lanes, long distances between exits, no moon, no witnesses. When it happens, you feel it before you understand it. A subtle pressure, like something leaning closer, curious whether you're paying attention. After everything I'd been through, I told myself I knew better. I told myself I understood the patterns. I avoided quiet pull-offs. I stayed where there were people, lights, cameras. I trusted my instincts. But the road doesn't care how careful you are. It only cares how tired you get. It was somewhere in western Kansas when it happened again. I'd been running longer than I should have, chasing a delivery window that mattered more on paper than it ever should have in real life. The highway was empty in that way that feels artificial, like the world had temporarily shut itself down. No oncoming headlights, no taillights ahead, just my beams cutting a narrow tunnel through the dark. The radio was on low, static, a few distant voices fading in and out. I wasn't listening to the words, just the proof of life. That's when the static dipped, and for a second, I thought the radio had gone dead. Then, someone breathed. Not spoke, not keyed up, just breathed into the mic. Slow, controlled, familiar. My hands tightened on the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I didn't respond. I didn't even look at the radio. I kept my eyes locked forward, heart pounding, telling myself it was interference, feedback, anything but what it felt like. The breathing stopped. A pause stretched out, long enough that I almost convinced myself it was over. Then a voice came through, low and calm, carrying the same patient confidence I'd heard years earlier in places I tried not to think about. "Still driving nights, huh?" I didn't answer. The voice chuckled softly, like it found that amusing, like it had expected it. "You know," it continued, "most folks don't last this long." I felt cold spread through my chest, deep and heavy. My mirrors showed nothing. No headlights, no movement, just darkness pressed flat against the glass. The voice didn't ask where I was, didn't ask what I was hauling. It already knew. "You ever think about how many people disappear out here?" it said. "How easy it is? No one hears anything, no one sees anything. The road takes care of the rest." The static crackled. The voice faded slightly, then returned stronger, closer, like it had leaned in. "You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about." Memories surged uninvited. The girl on the roadside, the bodies laid out like props, the knife flashing under rest stop lights, the laughter over the CB, the shoe on the cab floor, faces on missing posters, the dead weight of silence after everything ended. I swallowed hard and finally spoke, my voice barely steady enough to recognize as my own. I told whoever it was to get off my channel, to leave me alone. The laughter that followed was soft, almost fond. "Channel?" the voice said. "You think this is about channels?" The radio went dead. Not static, not fading. Dead. Every light on the dashboard flickered at once, then steadied. The engine never missed a beat, but my skin crawled like something had brushed past me. I drove another 50 miles without blinking, scanning every shadow, every overpass, every dark shape on the shoulder. Nothing happened. That was the worst part. At the next truck stop, crowded and loud, I pulled in and shut the engine off. My hands shook as I climbed down from the cab. I stood there for a long time, letting the noise and light wash over me, convincing myself I was safe, that whatever I'd heard was stress, fatigue, imagination. That night, I slept poorly, waking at every sound. When morning came, I checked the radio logs out of habit. There was no record of any transmission during that time. No signal, no call sign, nothing. I still drive. I probably always will. The road gets into you, rewires something fundamental. But now, when I'm out there late enough, when the world narrows down to headlights and hum and breath, I feel it again. That pressure, that attention. Like something out there knows me. Like it's patient. Because the road doesn't just connect places. It connects moments, connects people, connects mistakes. And once you've been part of its stories, once you've survived when others didn't, it doesn't forget you. It waits. For the night you're tired enough. For the night you make one small exception. For the night you decide to stop.